I stepped into the hospital's sterile hallway, the faint beep of machines humming in my ears, expecting to find my father frail and alone. Instead, I froze mid-step. Through the cracked door of room 214, I saw Lauren, my wife, swaying her hips in a slow, deliberate dance, her silhouette framed by the dim glow of his bedside lamp. She leaned close, her movements too intimate for a dying man's comfort, and my stomach twisted. I'm Noah, 34, an accountant who carves wooden figurines to unwind, not some jealous hothead. But this wasn't right. I come to check on Dad, who'd been fading from lung issues for months, not to catch my wife performing some private show. I pushed the door wider, the hinges creaking. She spun around, eyes wide, like a deer caught in headlights. Noah, he asked me to cheer him up, she stammered, smoothing her skirt. Cheer him up? With that? I wanted to laugh, but my throat tightened instead. Dad just lay there, eyes half open, wheezing faintly. I'd always trusted Lauren. 5 years married, no cracks I'd noticed. But now doubt gnawed at me. We'll talk later, I muttered, turning away. Back in the hall, I replayed it. Her fluid steps, the way she hovered over him. Context crashed into conflict. I'd seen her pack for girls' nights lately, always vague about where. Was this what she'd been hiding? My hands itched for my carving knife, not to hurt, just to steady me. I made her a cedar jewelry box last Christmas. She'd gushed over it. Now I wondered who she'd really dressed up for. Therefore, I decided I wasn't leaving this hospital without answers. Her car was still in the lot. I'd wait. Watch. Something was off, and I'd figure it out, even if it unraveled everything I thought I knew about her. I leaned against the hospital vending machine, sipping bitter coffee, eyes locked on Lauren's blue sedan. She'd rushed out after me, claiming she'd explain everything at home. But her voice had that shaky edge I'd only heard once before, when she'd dented my truck and swore it was an accident. I didn't buy it then, and I wasn't buying it now. I'm not a detective, just a guy who balances books and sands it into shapes. But I know when someone's lying. Her dance for Dad wasn't some spontaneous act. It felt rehearsed, purposeful. The parking lot was quiet, just the hum of a distant generator. I'd always seen Lauren as steady. Worked HR at a lumber yard, loved her routines. But then I remembered those late-night whispers on her phone, muffled behind closed doors. Just Susan, she'd say, her old college buddy. I let it slide. Therefore, I stayed put, watching her car. 10 minutes later, she emerged, glancing around like she knew I was there. She didn't head home. She drove toward the old industrial district. I followed, keeping my headlights off until I hit the main road. She pulled into a lot by a rundown office where a guy in a suit waited. My gut said lawyer, too polished for this part of town. They talked, heads close, her hands waving. I parked a block away, heart pounding. Context shifted. Dad owned a lumber company, big enough to keep us comfortable growing up, but he'd never let me near it. You're not cut out for it, he'd grunt. Was Lauren? Conflict hit hard when the lawyer handed her a folder. She flipped through it, nodded, then hugged him, too long, too tight. My fingers gripped the steering wheel. I'd carve her name into a pine plank once, a dumb romantic gesture. Now I wondered if she'd ever cared. Therefore, I needed proof. I snapped a blurry photo with my phone, the folder's edge just visible. Whatever she was up to, it wasn't about cheering up a sick man. It was bigger, and I'd find out how deep it went. I drove home in a daze, the photo of Lauren and that lawyer burning a hole in my pocket. Our little house sat dark, the porch swing I'd built creaking in the breeze. I'm Noah, steady, predictable, the guy who'd rather play in a board than pick a fight. But that dance, that folder, flipped a switch. I poured a whiskey, hands trembling, and sank into the couch. Lauren and I met at a bar. She'd laughed at my bad jokes, said my quiet vibe was refreshing. 5 years later, I thought I knew her. But then I replayed the last few months. She'd been distant, late nights at work, weekend trips to visit Susan. I chalked it up to stress. Her company was downsizing. Therefore, I grabbed her laptop from the kitchen counter. She'd left it open, a rookie mistake. I scrolled her emails. Nothing juicy, just HR stuff. But a calendar alert popped up. Meeting with T. Re. Transfer. T. Transfer? My mind raced to Dad's business. He'd built it from nothing, a lumber empire spanning 3 states. I'd never cared. Numbers were my thing, not sawdust. Context deepened. Growing up, Dad was a ghost, always at the mill, barking orders. Mom left when I was 10, said he loved the company more than us. I'd stayed out of spite, proving I didn't need him. But Lauren? She'd asked about his health lately, too often. Conflict crashed in. I found a locked file on her laptop titled Lumber Docs. Password protected. My chest tightened. I'm no hacker, but I tried her birthday, our anniversary. Nothing. Then, on a hunch, I typed Susan. It opened. Inside were contracts, bank statements, millions tied to Dad's company, with her signature scrawled on half. My whiskey glass hit the floor. She wasn't just dancing for him. She was in on something. Therefore, I grabbed my keys. I confronted her when she got home, but first, I needed to see those papers up close. Whatever game she was playing, it wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated. And I'd figure out her next move before she made it. I sped back to the industrial district, Lauren's laptop on the passenger seat, its screen glowing with those damning files. I'm Noah, the guy who'd rather car a dove than chase shadows, but here I was, tailing my wife like some gritty PI. The office lot was empty now, just a flickering streetlight casting long shadows. I parked and opened the laptop again. The contract showed transfers. Huge sums from Dad's lumber company to an offshore account. Lauren's name was everywhere, dated back 6 months. 6 months of lies. But then I saw it. A memo mentioning T. Grayson, ESQ the lawyer. I Googled him. Thomas Grayson, corporate attorney, known for shady restructurings. Context clicked. Dad's health had tanked around the same time these deals started. Lauren had been visiting him weekly, always with some excuse. I'd bought it. Too busy sanding a cedar shelf to question her. Therefore, I drove to Grayson's office downtown, a sleek building that screamed money. His lights were on. I slipped inside, the lobby empty except for a bored security guard. Here for Grayson. I lied, flashing a fake delivery slip I'd scribbled in the car. He waved me up. 3rd floor, corner office. Grayson was there on the phone, pacing. I pressed my ear to the door. She's handling it, he said. The old man's out of the picture soon. My blood ran cold. Out of the picture? Dad was sick, sure, but this sounded deliberate. Conflict spiked. Lauren stepped out of a side room, folder in hand, her face pale. She didn't see me, too focused on Grayson. He's fading fast, she whispered. We need to move now. Move what? I ducked behind a potted plant, heart hammering. They were plotting something big, and I was the only one not in on it. Therefore, I snapped more photos, shaky but clear enough, her, Grayson, the folder. I confront her later, but first, I needed leverage. Whatever they were up to, it wasn't just about money. It was personal, and I'd make sure they regretted leaving me in the dark. I slipped out of Grayson's building, the photos on my phone like grenades waiting to blow. I'm Noah, not a hero, just a guy who likes numbers and a quiet life, whittling pine into something useful. But Lauren's whisper, he's fading fast, echoed in my skull. Was she just waiting for Dad to go or pushing it along? I drove to the hospital, the night air thick with spring dampness. His room was dark when I got there, the nurse saying he'd stabilized. Stabilized? That didn't fit her story. I sat by his bed, watching his chest rise and fall, slow but steady. Context settled in. Dad had always been a wall, gruff, distant, obsessed with his lumber empire. I'd spent my teens resenting him, my 20s avoiding him. Lauren, though, had wormed her way in, visits, small talk, things I'd never bothered with. But then I noticed his chart on the table. Meds adjusted yesterday, higher doses. My gut twisted. I'm no doctor, but that didn't look like stabilizing. Conflict barreled through. The door creaked, and Lauren walked in, freezing when she saw me. Noah, what are you doing here? Her voice was too high, her purse clutched tight. Checking on him, I said, casual, testing her. She nodded, but her eyes darted to the chart. He's doing better, she lied. I knew it was a lie. Therefore, I stood, stepping closer. Saw you with Grayson. What's the folder about? Her face went white. It's work stuff. Boring HR things. Boring? With an offshore account? I smirked, letting her squirm. Looked pretty exciting to me. She backed toward the door, stammering about needing air. I let her go, but I grabbed the chart, snapping pics of the med changes. Something was off, way off. Therefore, I headed to my truck, mind racing. I'd dig into Grayson's deals, cross-check the meds with a friend who knew pharmacology. Lauren thought she had me fooled, but I was done playing the trusting husband. Whatever she and Grayson were planning, I'd turn it against them, starting now. I sat in my truck outside the hospital, the photos of Lauren, Grayson, and Dad's med chart glowing on my phone. I'm Noah, a guy who'd rather shape a block of oak than unravel conspiracies, but the pieces wouldn't let me rest. Dad's breathing had steadied, but those dose hikes nagged at me. I texted Mike, an old high school buddy turned pharmacist, attaching the chart pics. Legit or fishy? I asked. He replied fast. Way too high. Could knock him out for good, if sustained. My jaw clenched. Context flooded in. Dad had always been a fortress, cold, barking orders at the mill, leaving me to figure out life alone. I'd built my own world, numbers would Lauren, but she'd shifted lately, distant, glued to her phone, always visiting him. I thought she was bridging the gap, I never could. Therefore, conflict hit. Mike's words meant someone was tampering, and Lauren's hospital-hovering screamed suspect. Was she speeding up the inevitable? I drove home, the streets blurring past. Our house felt foreign now. Her yoga mat in the corner, my half-finished wooden bird on the shelf. I dug in her laptop again, the lumberdocs file still open. More transfers. Millions siphoned to a shell company called Pinecrest Holdings. Her signature looped across every page. My chest burned. She wasn't just dancing for him. She was dismantling his legacy. But then I saw an email from Grayson. He's waking up. Call me. Waking up? That flipped everything. Dad wasn't fading. He was fighting. Therefore, I grabbed my keys and headed back to the hospital. If he was lucid, he'd know something. Lauren thought she had this locked down, but I'd get to him first. The night stretched thin, headlights cutting through fog. I wasn't just the quiet husband anymore. I was the guy who'd carve the truth out of this mess, no matter how deep the lies ran. She'd underestimated me, and that was her first mistake. I slipped into Dad's hospital room at dawn, the sky bruising purple outside. He was awake, eyes sharp despite the tubes snaking from his arms. I'm Noah, not the son he'd wanted, but the one he got, more at home with a ledger than a lumberyard. Hey, Dad, I said, voice low. He grunted, studying me. You look like hell. Fair. I hadn't slept. Context settled. Growing up, he'd been a titan, 6'4", voice like gravel, always at the mill while I tinkered with wood scraps in the garage. He'd call me soft, say I'd never run his empire. I'd prove him wrong by not needing it. But now, seeing Lauren's name on those transfers, I wondered if he'd pulled her in instead. Therefore, I leaned closer. What's Lauren doing here so much? His eyes narrowed, breath rasping. She's helping. Helping? Conflict slammed in. He tried to sit up, wincing, then wave me off. Ask her yourself. But I'd seen her with Grayson, heard her whisper about finishing it. I pressed. She's moving money. Your money. His face twitched, surprise, maybe anger. What money? He growled. Either he didn't know, or he was a better liar than I'd thought. I showed him a photo of the Pinecrest docs on my phone. His jaw tightened, but before he could answer, the door swung open. Lauren. She froze, clutching a coffee cup. Noah, you're here early. Her smile was plastic, eyes darting to Dad. He glared at her, then me. Tell him, he rasped. She laughed, too loud. Tell him what? You're confused, Han. But her hand shook, coffee sloshing. Therefore, I stood, blocking her exit. She wasn't slipping away this time. Dad coughed, hard, then muttered, get Grayson. Lauren paled. I caught her off guard, and Dad wasn't as out of it as she'd hoped. Whatever they were pulling, it was crumbling. I'd stay right here until one of them cracked, and I'd bet on her breaking first. I stood between Lauren and the door, her coffee cup trembling as Dad's words hung heavy. Get Grayson. I'm Noah, the guy who'd rather smooth a walnut plank than corner my wife, but this was no negotiation. Her eyes flicked to Dad, then me, a deer trapped in a hunter's sights. He's delirious, she said, voice thin. Needs rest. But Dad's glare was lucid, cutting through her excuse like a saw through pine. Context deepened. Lauren had always been the charmer, quick smiles, easy lies. She'd reel me in years ago, said she loved my calm. I believed her. But now, seeing her sweat, I saw the cracks. Those Susan trips, the late nights, her sudden interest in Dad's health. Therefore, conflict erupted. "What's Pinecrest Holdings?" I asked, voice steady. Her cup hit the floor, brown liquid pooling. "W what?" she stammered. I stepped closer. "Your name's all over it. Millions gone." Dad wheezed, gripping the bed rail. "You little—" He couldn't finish, but his fury said enough. Lauren backed up, hitting the wall. "It's not what you think." I was protecting his legacy. Protecting? By draining it? I smirked cold. With Grayson's help? Her mouth opened, then shut. She was drowning, and I wasn't throwing a line. But then Dad rasped, "She's right." Right? My head snapped to him. Context shifted again. He nodded, slow, like he'd planned this. "Company's bleeding. She's saving it." Saving it? Through offshore accounts? Conflict roared back. I pulled up the Pinecrest docs on my phone, shoving them in his face. "This isn't saving. It's theft." His eyes darkened, but he didn't flinch. Lauren seized the moment, darting for the door. I grabbed her arm, gently but firm. "Not yet." She yanked free, eyes wild. "You don't get it, Noah." But I did. They were in this together, and I'd been the fool. Therefore, I turned to Dad. "You're done calling shots. I'd take the company myself, legally, ruthlessly." Lauren gasped, but I was already moving. She'd danced her way into this mess, and I'd make sure it was her last performance. I stormed out of Dad's room, Lauren's protest fading behind me as I dialed Chris, an old college buddy turned corporate attorney. "I'm Noah, not a shark, just a guy who balances books and whittles cedar, but I'd had enough." Chris picked up groggy. "It's 6 a.m., man." I didn't apologize. "Needed to look at some docs." Now, I sent him the Pinecrest files, Lauren's signatures, the transfers, all of it. He whistled. "This is a gold mine. Messy, but exploitable." Context settled. I'd met Chris at a tax seminar. Sharp, sarcastic, knew every loophole in the book. I'd helped him with a spreadsheet once. He owed me. But then he paused. "Your dad's still alive, right? Makes it trickier." Tricky, not impossible. Therefore, conflict kicked in. I needed control before Lauren and Grayson locked me out. "Find a way," I said. He laughed. "Oh, I will. Give me a day." I paced the hospital lot, replaying Dad, she's right. Was he covering for her? Or clueless? My phone buzzed. Mike, the pharmacist. "Those meds?" Someone's been upping them manually. Not protocol. My blood boiled. Lauren had access. Visitor logs proved it. But then tires screeched. I looked up. Her sedan peeled out, Grayson in the passenger seat. She'd bolted. Conflict doubled. I jumped in my truck, tailing them through morning traffic. They hit the highway, then a side road to a diner, greasy, remote. I parked across the street, watching. She leaned into Grayson, frantic, while he scribbled on a napkin, planning their next move. Therefore, I called Chris again. "They're meeting. Speed this up." He groaned. "I've got a draft, proxy transfer. If your dad signs, you're in. If not, we forge it." Forge it? I hesitated. Law-abiding Noah didn't do that. But trusting Noah was gone. I hung up, staring at Lauren through the diner window. She played me. Maybe Dad too. I'd beat her at her own game, legally or not. Chris texted, "Papers ready." "Your call." My call. I gripped the wheel, decision made. She'd regret ever stepping into that hospital room. I watched Lauren and Grayson from my truck, their heads bent over that napkin in the diner's grimy booth. I'm Noah, the guy who'd rather tally receipts than tail cheats, but here I was plotting like a cornered animal. Chris's text burned in my mind. Papers ready. A proxy transfer, Dad's signature, real or not, would hand me the company. I'd never crossed that line before. But then I saw Lauren laugh, carefree, while my world unraveled. Context sank in. 5 years with her, quiet nights, her teasing my wood carving, me believing we were solid. I'd ignore the red flags, her work calls, the way she'd dodge questions about Dad. Therefore, conflict surged. I drove back to the hospital, Chris's draft in my inbox. Dad was awake, sipping water, alone. "You again," he muttered, suspicious. I didn't waste time. Sign this, I said, sliding the proxy form across his tray. Why? His eyes bored into me. Because Lauren's taking everything. He snorted, but his hand shook as he read it. She's smarter than you. Smarter? Maybe. But I caught her. She's bleeding you dry. I snapped, showing the Pinecrest transfers. His face hardened doubt, then rage. He scrawled his name, sloppy but legal. Don't screw it up, he rasped. Conflict peaked. Lauren burst in mid-sentence. Grayson says we. She stopped, seeing the form. What's that? Her voice cracked. I smiled cold. My company now. She lunged for the paper, but I pocketed it. You're lying, she shrieked, hands trembling. Dad just watched, silent. I'd won, legally, barely. But then she whispered, You'll regret this, and stormed out. Regret? I'd regret nothing. Therefore, I called Chris. File it. Today. He laughed. Done by noon. Congrats, CEO. I stood there, the room spinning. Lauren thought she'd outmaneuvered me, but I'd flipped the board. Dad coughed, staring out the window. She's not done, he mumbled. Not done. Fine. I'd be ready. The proxy was my weapon, and I'd wield it until she had nothing left to throw. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I left Dad's room with the signed proxy in my pocket, the hospital's fluorescent buzz fading behind me. I'm Noah, not a tycoon, just a guy who crunches numbers and sands wood, but now I held the keys to a lumber empire. Chris texted, filed. You're in charge. My pulse raced, victory, sharp and unfamiliar. But then I saw Lauren's sedan was gone from the lot. She'd vanished after her threat. You'll regret this. Regret? Not if I found her first. Context settled. Lauren had always been a planner, meticulous, persuasive, turning my quiet life into hers. I'd loved that about her once. Therefore, conflict roared in. I drove to our house, expecting her to pack and run. The place was trashed, drawers open, papers strewn. She'd been here, but not for clothes. My laptop, her lumber docks, was missing. She'd taken the evidence. My stomach dropped. She wasn't fleeing. She was fighting back. I checked the safe where I kept backups. Still there, a USB with every file. Relief hit, but it was short-lived. The front door creaked. I spun, grabbing a carving chisel from the counter. Not to her, just to feel steady. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Noah. It was Chris, hands up. Easy, man. Saw her peel out. Figured you'd need me. I exhaled, lowering the chisel. She's got my laptop. He grinned. Doesn't matter. Proxy's locked. She's got nothing legal. Nothing legal? Maybe. But Lauren didn't play fair. Therefore, I handed Chris the USB. Dig deeper. Pinecrest still a ghost. Find the accounts. He nodded, but his phone buzzed. A news alert. Hospital lockdown. Patient missing. Missing? My chest tightened. Dad. I bolted for my truck, Chris trailing. Lauren had made her move, and it wasn't just about money anymore. She'd taken him, sick, vulnerable, my leverage. I'd seized the company, but she'd raised the stakes. Whatever she was planning, I'd track her down before she turned this into something I couldn't undo. I sped to the hospital, Chris shotgun, his fingers flying over his phone as he pulled Pinecrest records. I'm Noah, the guy who'd rather carve a sparrow than chase chaos. But Lauren had Dad, and that changed everything. The lot was a circus. Cops, nurses, flashing lights. A security guard waved me down. You family? Old man's gone. Someone cut his four, wheeled him out. Cut his four? My hands gripped the wheel. Lauren. Context clicked. She'd danced for him, whispered with Grayson, played the doting daughter-in-law. I'd thought it was greed, but this was desperation. Therefore, conflict crashed in. Chris held up his screen. Pinecrest linked to a motel, shady spot off Route 9. Payments from her account. Route 9? 30 minutes away. I floored it, tires squealing. She's got him there, I said. Chris nodded. Or Grayson does. They're scrambling. The motel loomed ahead, peeling paint, neon sign flickering. Her sedan sat in the lot, Grayson's BMW beside it. I parked out of sight, grabbing my phone. Record this, I told Chris, sneaking closer. Through a cracked window, I saw them. Lauren pacing, Grayson on a call, Dad slumped in a chair, groggy but awake. We move the funds tonight, Grayson snapped. He signs, or we're done. Lauren knelt by Dad, voice soft. Just one more, okay? He mumbled something, head lolling. Conflict spiked. I hit record, catching every word. She was forcing him, coercion, not cunning. But then Dad's eyes met mine through the glass. Recognition flickered. He coughed, loud, drawing their attention. Lauren spun, spotting me. No, she lunged for the door, but I was already inside, Chris behind me. It's over, I said, holding up the phone. Grayson froze, hands mid-dial. Lauren's face twisted, fear, then fury. You don't understand. Understand? I'd heard enough. Therefore, I called the cops, keeping the recording rolling. She'd taken Dad, crossed every line, but I had proof. Sirens wailed in the distance as she sank to the floor, defeated. I'd won for now. But Dad's weak stare told me this wasn't the end of her story. I stood in the motel room, phone still recording as Lauren crumpled, Grayson silent beside her. I'm Noah, not a vigilante, just a man pushed too far, watching the woman I'd loved unravel. Cops burst in, cuffing them both, while paramedics rushed to Dad, hooking him to oxygen. He grabbed my arm, voice a rasp. Good move. Pride? From him? I almost laughed. The recording, Grayson's threats, Lauren's pleas, sealed their fate. Context deepened. I'd built a life with her, small, steady, sanding wood while she cooked. She'd seemed content. But then I remembered her late-night pacing, the way she'd studied Dad's company reports I'd left out. She'd been plotting longer than I'd known. Therefore, conflict erupted, a cop approached. She's asking for you. Against my better judgment, I followed. Lauren sat in the squad car, eyes red. I didn't want this, she whispered. He made me. He? Dad? I scoffed. You signed everything. She shook her head, frantic. Grayson, he's got more. Offshore stuff. I was trapped. Trapped? She'd danced for Dad, moved millions. But her tremble felt real. Conflict twisted. Grayson smirked from the other car, unfazed. Was he the puppet master? I turned to Chris, who'd overheard. Check the recording, he said. I replayed it, Grayson's voice. He signs, or we're done. Not she's done. We. Context shifted. Dad groaned as they loaded him into the ambulance. She's not lying, he wheezed. Not lying? My head spun. Therefore, I ran to him. What's Grayson got? His eyes fluttered shut, but he muttered everything. Everything? The company? Me? Lauren screamed as they drove her away. I tried to stop him. Stop him? She collapsed in there. Stress, the medic said. Now, she was headed to a hospital bed, not a cell. I stood in the motel lot, sirens fading. Grayson had more cards, and Lauren might have been his pawn. But I had the company, the recording, power. Therefore, I vowed to dig until every secret spilled. She betrayed me, but this wasn't over. Dad's everything echoed, and I'd find out what it meant, no matter who it broke. I drove Dad back to the hospital, his breathing shallow but steady in the passenger seat. I'm Noah, the guy who'd rather tally profits than trap traders, but I just caged Lauren and Grayson. The proxy locked the company in my hands, and the recording was with the cops. Victory tasted bitter, though. Dad stared out the window, silent until we parked. You're tougher than I thought, he rasped, then handed me a folded note from his pocket. Read it later. Later? Context hit. He'd been a shadow my whole life. Mill meetings, barked orders, no time for me. I'd carved my own path, avoiding his world. But now, holding his empire, I saw him frail human. Therefore, conflict crashed. Lauren was hospitalized, Grayson detained, but Dad's everything gnawed at me. I unfolded the note in the hospital hall while he got checked. Scrawled in his shaky hand. She was always smarter than you. My daughter. Daughter? My knees buckled. Lauren, my wife, was his kid. Half-sister. The dance, the lies, the money. It wasn't just betrayal. It was blood. Context deepened. Her questions about his past. Her ease with him. I thought it was charm, not kinship. Conflict roared. Grayson knew. That smirk. He'd played her lineage like a trump card. Dad's empire wasn't hers to steal. It was her birthright. But she'd married me. Why? To get close? To spite him? My head throbbed. I stormed to his room. Note crumpled in my fist. Is this true? He nodded, eyes dull. Her mom, years ago, kept it quiet. Quiet? He'd let me marry my own sister. Rage flared, but his cough stopped me, weak, final. She didn't know. At first, he wheezed. At first? Therefore, I stumbled out, the note a live wire. Lauren had unraveled when I took the company. Grief, not just greed. She'd lost her father's legacy to her husband. Her brother. The hall spun. I'd won, but at what cost? Grayson's everything was this secret, and it shattered me. I needed air, answers, but Dad's monitors flatlined behind me. He was gone, and I was alone with the truth. I sat in Dad's old office, the lumber company's helm, a half-carved wooden wolf on the desk. I'm Noah, not the trusting fool I'd been, but a man forged by betrayal, clutching a multi-million-dollar empire. Lauren was still in the hospital, sedated after her collapse. Grayson faced charges, fraud, coercion, the works. The note, my daughter, sat framed in my mind, a scar I couldn't sand away. Dad was gone, his secret out with his last breath. Context settled. I'd started this chasing a dance, a hunch. 5 years with Lauren, laughter, quiet nights, now ash. She was my half-sister, a fact she'd learned too late, twisted by Grayson into a weapon. Therefore, conflict lingered. I'd won the company, but the victory hollowed me. I'd loved her, trusted her, and she played me, knowingly or not. The cops found more Pinecrest accounts, Grayson's, not hers. She'd been his tool, not his partner. I twirled the carving knife, with shavings curling. Context shifted. Dad had built this place, brick by brick, leaving me scraps of affection. Now it was mine, and I'd reshape it. Ruthless, precise. But then I found a letter in his desk, dated a year ago. Noah, Lauren's my mistake. Protect her. Protect her? After this? Conflict twisted. She betrayed me, yet he'd begged mercy. My sister. My wife. My enemy. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The dance in that hospital room had sparked this. Her hips swaying, my world cracking. I'd turned it against her, seized everything. But the truth left me colder, sharper. Therefore, I stood, pocketing the wolf. I'd run this company my way, cut the rot, build something new. Lauren could recover, face her fate, but I'd never see her the same. Grayson would rot in court. And me? I'd carve a legacy from this mess, one they'd never touch. Thank you for tuning into this story. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you're watching from right now. Let us know in the comments.